welcome to Orinda Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi. I'm your host Orinda, and today we're talking about Drägan Duma. I had hoped to interview the author of this fantastic series, but due to a personal situation, I cannot interview her at this time. So there will be a part 2 of Drägan Duma. Drägan Duma is a compelling fantasy trilogy about courage, friendship, despair, trust, and inner strength that takes you to a world you never want to leave. First of all, I love Drägan Duma. I love the dragons, I love the friendships, the connection with the dragons, and the story of good versus bad. I also love the bond between Rune and Jill that is like a father-daughter bond. I like the tropes that is logical in a fantasy story like this, but it is just a good story. Every year I will do a reading marathon to get more inspiration for my own fantasy stories. But this is just an awesome story and I really love to read it. My advice, read it and love it. So what can I tell you about Drägan Duma? Drägan Duma is originally a trilogy, but at the end the author, Patty van Delft, decided to write one book more of it, so it's in total 4 books. It's a cross between low and high fantasy because the girl Jill comes from Orwald and is taken back to her own home on Drägan Duma. So it's a parallel world of ours. And in this parallel world, it's all about magic, good versus bad. But also there are like dragon riders. Well, some kind of a dragon riders. It's that when a dragon egg come out, the dragon will choose his soul companion in a way. So the human or alien will be connected by this dragon bond. And the history is that when this bond didn't exist, because of Mortensen, who was a good wizard in the early days, he became bad and, well, the dragons and the humans, the dragons said that they needed to have this bond because they will be stronger, and it is true in a sense. But let me start first to introduce you what I know about the author of this fantastic series. Patty van Delft is a Dutch fantasy writer, and in the last, I think 5 till 6, 7, 8 years, she is becoming very well known in the Netherlands because of this series. And the fun part is when she is going or doing a signing session, she would often dress herself up of one of her characters. And I had the privileges to meet her for a couple of times. And she is awesome, really awesome. I hope I can interview her soon because I would love to hear her side of how this story begins for her. And of course how can I say this? I think it's in the Netherlands. It's really difficult to be a fantasy writer, and maybe you guys know it, but I am also a fantasy writer, and I have become a fantasy writer because I always have loved writing and, of course, fantasy. But those series of Harry Potter and Drägan Duma are my true inspiration for my own fantasy writing. And even Patty knows that I have written a lot of fanfiction of Drägan Duma. And I think she really enjoyed reading them, but it has been a long time ago I wrote those, so maybe I need to finish them. Jill is the main person of this story. And Jill, her mother is from our world, Earth, but her dad, who is also a dragon rider, or yeah, how you can call it, maybe a dragon knight, I don't know, live in Drägan Duma. Roan and her dad are the very best of friends. And they had a mission to go to our world, or Earth, to protect the Earth and his people for Mortisum, the bad wizard, and his soldiers. So that is how Jill's mother and father met. Jill's father was immediately head over heels about her, and Roan warned him of don't be that too close because eventually we have to go back to Drägan Duma. And because of not disturbing the balance, and if you will call it the fold between the two worlds, so the dragons will jump into the emptiness and will jumping back then in Drägan Duma or our world. So at the end, her mom became pregnant of her and Roan, and her father knew that, and so when the mission ended, yes, and Roan and her father, who called his name Killard, had to go back to Drägan Duma, but they will often visit Jill as much as they can. Now, I must say something about the bond between the dragon and the rider. It is a very, very special, unique bond. Even more uniquer and specialer as in the inheritance circle of Christopher Paolini. The way I love this bond is that the dragons not only giving and stronger the rider, but they also give them magic, more magic as normally, but they have some kind of a soul bond, and that means that the dragon, but also the rider, can feel each other's emotions, and they can hear each other in their minds, but also and that is where Jill is coming in this story. Jill is very special. Normally it's just only the bond between the rider and the dragon. Jill is the one who can hear every creature in Drägan Duma. So that means she doesn't only hear her dragon, but she hears also the dragon of Roan. She also hears every other dragon, but also she can communicate and hear the scalers. The scalers are smaller versions of dragons, but still more bat-like creatures. And they are the right animals of Mortensen and his soldiers. Like maybe if you have read it or seen it in the inherited circle of Christopher Paolini, those scalers have been forced. And very at the end of those books, I think it was the end of or something wherein book 3, Scalers will be bound to the rider and the dragons. So you can imagine that this is a very large story of not only reading it, but also enjoying the whole storyline. And what I really, really love about this, and normally that's how I really like it. If you read the book first, then you can use your own imagination how the characters look like and how they are. And for example, with Lord of the Rings, I saw movies first, and then I read the books. So with the problem that follows was when I read the books, I saw Frodo as in Elijah Wood, or as in Saruman, I saw Christopher Lee. I think that you can relate to that. Well, that's why I'm happy that there isn't any movies of those series. And a little note between a little fast note, you can also read those books on Amazon and on Kindle. The last time I checked with the author of those books is that she has been translating the books in multiple languages. I don't know if they already are out, but that is something I can ask her when I interview her for part 2 of this episode. So the only thing what I still can do is I don't know if there are already people out of the Netherlands who are reading her books in English or in your language. I don't know how big of a fandom she has abroad. I can say in the Netherlands her fandom is very big, and I think because she has one of the well, like I can say this, I don't think it's fantasy is liked in the Netherlands, but not that big that you will be quite as famous if you would be in, for example, England or in America or whatever where. I must say, yes, those books are mostly about friendship, good fears, bad. But what I really do love also is there is a special love for the dragons, and there is a special love for romantic love. And by that romantic love, Jill is able to destroy Mortensen. And let me tell you a little bit of Mortensen. Mortensen was a good wizard from in the Drägan Duma world, but his problem, and that is with every bad character in fantasy or whatever, it's he wanted to have power. He wanted to have power over all Drägan Duma, and he wanted to. That includes creatures, humans, kings and queens, but also dragon riders and the dragons. And if you know, in those stories, that will never happen in a way of you can push a dragon that way that it will fully comply. And Mortensen is also somebody who has two faces. And that is how he can cope with his, well, let us say their agenda and his agenda. So in the period that he wasn't all bad, it was very confusing for him. And like every person, he had to choose between bad and good. And because he wanted to rule over everyone, he became bad. And of course, a wizard who become bad will use black magic. He even sent his daughter on a mission, who he manipulated in that way that she think she was and could destroy Jill. So Jill in this story is the chosen one. There are two sides on that. In one way, she wanted that to be because she loved this new world. She is more home than ever because in her Earth world, she has always been a orphan, and so she has to take care of herself. Jill is also a character that is struggle with who she is, what she is, and like young teenagers are. So she never had known her father and his dragon. It was only her mother, but her mother died in a car accident that was blamed to be by mortars and soldiers. Forgive me, I can't remember the names of those creatures at the moment, but okay. The other thing I really like to tell you is about Rune. Rune is, like I said, a father figure for Jill, but he is also her protector. And beautiful thing of Jill is that, like I said, she can communicate with all the creatures and all the dragons. And so when Jill didn't have her own dragon yet, Rune's dragon, Mordat, would take Jill for little flights. She would fly with him. And that is very peculiar because normally dragons will not do that. They only fly and ride with their own rider. But it seems that Mordat chosen Jill as his second rider. And through the story you can see that. Now I must say, so I told you there are 4 books. You go 1, 2, 3, and the 4th book is a pre-book before 1, 2, and 3. So if you want to read it correctly, you need to read book 4 first and then 1, 2, 3. Patty also have written 2 other books about Drägan Duma, and those are like, one is like other stories, background stories, and there is the other one is about how Drägan Dumas look like and how the laws are, the backgrounds of the tribes of the dragon riders. But also, it's nice to know that it's not only those 4 books. And I must say it is too much to tell you about the whole story because it's like 4 books and, well, much is happening in those books. The other thing I like to tell you is that the word Drägan Duma, where is that coming from, or what is the story that Drägan Duma called Drägan Duma? Drägan Duma is a fusion of dragon, like as a dragon, and Duma is free. It's the word free in Drägan Duma. And so that means, although the dragons have been bound to humans or other creatures, they are still free. So you have bounded dragons and you have free dragons, but this bond has become because the wild dragons, the free dragons, had to do this so they can free Drägan Duma. And the people wanted to honor those dragons. And those dragons have been honored with that Drägan Duma called Drägan Duma. So I also told you about the Nothing. The Nothing is some kind of a jump world that the dragons can use, not only the dragons but also mortars and soldiers, to jump from one world to another world. But it's also the world when the rider dies and the dragon not, the dragon will go empty and will jump into the Nothing. That means also, yes, those dragons are still alive. But in one way, they are crazy and lost and not dragons in a way. So when Jill was in danger and her friends wasn't there, her dragon wasn't there, from out of the Nothing there was another dragon, a white dragon. Moradad is also white, but this dragon was Moradad's brother. Not only in blood, but also in clan brother. It was the dragon of Jill's father. And Moradad will appear a couple of times. And sorry for you guys, spoiler alert! At the end, when dragons, people, and alliances are there, dragons from the Nothing are coming to help. And I'm even getting a little bit emotional now because I have read this series for multiple times now, and every time this is one of the moments that I was thinking, yes, they're back, everything is going to be okay. But instead of Naradat is staying and the others are staying, Naradat and the other dragons still are going to jump back. And maybe you say it's logical, but for me, I had the hope that the love of Jill could bring those dragons back and heal them in a way that they are fully dragons again. And I know you guys are going to love this story. I know you guys are going to love how the battles are written, and it's not only the backstories, but it is also the stories next to it. For example, and I was forgetting to mention that, Jill had 3 friends in our world, what by the Drägan Dumas called the outside world. And in circumstances, she had to take those 3 friends with her. Well, one of those friends is the daughter of Mortensen, so she is kind of spy, and she is the one who kidnapped Jill for her dad. So, making a long story short, Jill and her friends were having a lot of adventures, and her friends from the outside world can't go back anymore. But because they are orphans and they have nobody in the outside world, they are accepting and enjoying their new lives in Drägan Duma. Jacko, one of her outside friends, become a knight and will help her a lot. And then we have what's her name? Well, there was another girl, and she become a cook for in the castle. But guys, I really am advising you to read this story because this is so an amazing fantasy story. And I hope I can interview Patty van Delft as soon as possible so you can know even more about Drägan Duma. So, fantasy lovers, My recommendation is really Drägan Duma. Listeners, I really like to thank you for listening to this podcast, and I hope you enjoy it. I try to be as diverse as I can. So tell me what you think of this podcast. How am I doing? And if you have any tips how I can do things differently, let me know. But you do have to bear in mind that I made this podcast for fun and I don't have to make money of it. You can reach out on Podbean, the Facebook group, the YouTube channel, and the Discord server of Horrendous Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi, and on Twitter at OTFASP. If you like to talk about this episode or just want to comment on this episode, you can reach out on Podbean, Facebook group, the YouTube channel, and the Discord server of Horrendous Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi. And of course, we also have a Twitter account at OTFASP. Well, where can you follow, subscribe, and listen to Horrendous Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi? Well, you can do that on Podbean, Spotify, Google Podcast, the Facebook group, and the YouTube channel. I'm your host, Orinda. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time. The next episode we will talk about is the Power Rangers movie from 2017.